Thank you very much. Okay, well, hello everyone. Welcome. This is very exciting for us to be here today and to meet with you. And Marie-France and I are just delighted to be opening this conversation today. And this is an exciting new program that we're moving towards. Marie-France, do you want to share your screen and we can perhaps begin?
Certainly. Okay. And I think that is it full size at the moment?
Good.
Perfect.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, so we do have a lot of information to cover today, and I appreciate that we've had a form of informal introductions. But just to sort of locate us in relation to the program, my name, of course, is Anita, and Marie-France and I are colleagues in the art education department. And we are looking to open up the offerings that we have in art education with this online, almost entirely online cohort. So we'll begin then with a bit of the backstory. Oh, I'm sorry, Marie-France, please.
So before we begin, yes, it's important for us to acknowledge that the University of British Columbia is located on the traditional unceded and unsurrendered territory of the Halkamenim-speaking Musqueam people. It has been a place of learning and culture and history for nations, and the Musqueam Nation is still extremely active and present. You can see here on the photograph the Museum of Anthropology, where this is Musqueam territory. So there's a very close collaborations between today Musqueam nations and that Museum of Anthropology, and generating rich spaces of conversation. I want to mention that for me, I'm just a little bit in the back there. So this is really the point of UBC, Musqueam Point. But would be like 30 streets in the back. So I'm kind of at the intersection of Squamish, Tsleil-Waututh, as Musqueam territory. So my area is Arbutus Ridge. And this was a shared kind of territory. And I will say more about my own lineage later on, but this is the territory where we have the great privilege to study and work. And hopefully also in this program, all the students, even though it's going to be an online program, you will have the opportunity. It is part of the program to actually also for you to come here at least once in the program for hands-on studio. So we will continue.
Thank you. It was a beautiful introduction. And yeah, so a little bit about the backstory. How did we get here? A little bit about the program. This is going to be the first ABER program in Canada. And the Faculty of Education at UBC is world-renowned as an international ABER hotspot. For more than 25 years now, we have seen education scholars like Rita Irwin in visual arts and Carl Lego in language and literacy, Peter Gazouassis in music, George Beliveau in drama, among others, along with alumni and current graduate students, establishing arts-based educational research discourses and practices that continue to lead to the expansion of research methodologies with emerging practices in the field of education. And you may have heard some of the terms previously, for example, artography or autoethnography, research-based theater, poetic inquiry, narrative inquiry, performative inquiry, and I think some of you have already mentioned that this is your area of interest as you're in your teaching practice. But also movement practices is another area that we would explore, creative writing as scholarship, and other forms as well. Particularly as these apply to embedding equity and diversity through creative practices in K-12, in community, in higher education, and beyond in teacher education. So this is a little bit of the backstory. And as you can see on this slide here, we have the cornerstones, the EDID cornerstones that in fact frame the courses and frame the program. And they are certainly expansive, but also looking at it from a worlding practice, looking at it with an international perspective. So we will look at criticality, the merits of Aber inquiry, and the debates that have formed the ways that we come to this work. We will look at ethical issues and concerns, as well as the critiques of these bodies of scholarship. In terms of the experiential and the experimental, we're looking at how we engage with methodology as an applied practice. What does it mean to actually activate this in the course of our days, in our classrooms, in our studios? We will look at non-representational research and what that constitutes, and that will bring us into digital domains, AI, virtual practices, and more. In terms of diffractive engagement, we're looking at spectrums of social engagement and communities of practice that are engaging with the affect, the sensorial, sense of feelings, the lure of feelings, as it were. So emotional and participatory practice research is absolutely essential in the ways that we're framing this program. And we also bring in the speculative, and this is a little bit of an emergent area. You may have heard terms like object-oriented inquiry and more than humanism and post-humanism. So all of this will be part of the conversations that we will be hosting in the context of the program. So co-creating our knowledge in ways that we can work together, co-authoring, relational pedagogies, radical pedagogies too, and all of the tensionalities that come with this body of work. So thank you for that. Moving me forward to the program.
Oh, I don't mean to push you.
It's okay. No, I get very excited about this, so I will keep talking. You got to keep me on track.
Yeah.
So thank you, Marie-France. But absolutely, in terms of the objectives, we are looking at ways that we can develop specific expertise in relation to theories, methodologies, and practices that are informing visual, literary, performative, and digital arts as research and education. And with an orientation to international arts-based research and practices, our goals include how we can advance Aber futures as an approach to inquiry that is transdisciplinary, transmedia, that advocates for holistic approaches that cultivate adaptive methods and modes of inquiry. So in this way, we're seeking to facilitate some synergistic openings for next-gen scholars like yourselves, as we think about the ways and the needs of the 21st century challenges in teaching and learning. So we do draw upon the UN Global Citizenship Mandate, peace education, the Sustainability Development Goals, in all the ways that we're thinking, making, and doing. These are always implicated in the ways that we think with our courses. So students are invited to learn through critical analyses of Aber theories and discourses, building networks, addressing historical contexts, how practices can be taken up across disciplines, and looking perhaps, for example, in geography. What does geography offer the ways that we come to our work in education, or the humanities, or engineering, or medicine? And we will look at it from a very broadly based understanding of what constitutes Aber and how that can then apply to professional practice in schools, communities, studios, and indeed in our personal settings. Marie-France, jump in.
Yes, and if I may add, one of the objective also, it's one of the inherent objective, and it might seem obvious, but you will be a cohort. This
Yes.
program, if ever you choose to join, it's a cohort. And therefore, as students, even though you students are from, because I'm also in the cohort of museum education, so students come from all different time zones. But it's really beautiful, even though the courses are mostly asynchronous and online, but we do have also a moment at UBC. There's really a sense of community that develops, a sense of thinking together. exploring ideas and joyfully, discussing ideas, even though we might not agree with each other, but like unpacking and discussing. And there's really beautiful intellectual, academic, artistic playfulness in exploring ideas because it's a cohort. So that is also really a beautiful, I think, moment. So some of the outcomes.
I really appreciate how you frame that, Marie-France, because I think that that is absolutely part of a central part of how art as research is emerging and evolving and maturing as we go forward. So this is very much about how we will look at activities and activations in the context of our courses, with the theory practice as the cornerstone. So we're looking at this kind of very flexible learning modalities. And so I'll give one example in addition to what Marie-France just shared. And that is one that I use in most of my courses is collaborative online international learning, or COIL modules. And they're wonderful ways to activate art and our activities, where we're working with teams. So for example, we will work in a team with a museum and contribute to public pedagogies in a variety of different ways. So in the past, some of the teams have created exhibitions, virtual exhibitions, through art exchanges by walking in the cities and the locations where they are. Others have produced podcasts in relation to a museum collection. Others do blogs about EDI issues of concern in the local situated knowledges. So these are all different ways that being part of an online virtual cohort that is expansive across a number of domains can actually bring a whole other layer of learning and a whole other way of learning to the fore. And I think that's a very exciting potential of doing a cohort like this. So in addition to the collaborative clusters and the innovative pedagogies and the international perspectives, I think another really important part of how we're coming to this work is this shared commitment to Indigenous knowledges, which is something that Marie-France highlighted at the very beginning, as being foundational to transformative learning about the potential of art as research. And so this is all part of the program. I think we're kind of jumping around a little bit right now, but I can get profiles the scope and the depth and the breadth of what it is that we're looking to build in terms and building upon the long-standing legacy of ABER scholars in our Faculty of Education.
Exactly.
We could probably move
Shall we
to
change the slide?
I think
So
so.
for us, we do, if you see point number 5 here, so thinking art space inquiry, not simply as producing a fixed knowledge, absolutely not. It's a stance, it's a way of being in the world, it's about wonderment, it's about really lived inquiry and your own thinking, and therefore connecting to your own professional practice and finding ways to integrate that. But it creates a real space, a rich space, I think, to think. And sometimes as professional, especially I'm looking at some of you who are teachers, we know that the everyday report cards and taking care of the students and preparing, and we don't sometimes have the space. So what is that cohort and joining graduate studies is having that space for you to think and to grow and to connect with others in your thinking also. So there we go. Just a little bit about us now.
Well, okay, this is work that this has defined my career. I've worked with stories as pedagogic pivots. I've worked with visual art practices in a whole variety of contexts and spaces and places. So part of the work that I'm now attending to is how we internationalize art education differently. So this is just a little bit of a summary profile of the work that I've been doing. But, Marie-France and I both come out of the tradition of UBC. I was here about 25 years ago, Marie-France much more recently. And so we have the legacy and the story of UBC and art education and ABER as part of how we come to the work. And I think that's defined certainly in my bio. And I can certainly offer you some more specifics if you're interested.
And what I've put here also in this slides, and perhaps I don't know, Calvin, if we will be able to actually put up the PDF on the website, but those are two courses in the MED, the arts-based research MED that Dr. Sinner will be teaching, so artwork scholarship and artography. We will have also Dr. Shannon Leddy, who's a Métis scholar, will be teaching Indigenous visual expression as pedagogy, a fascinating course, engaging also with contemporary Indigenous artists. Professor Donald O'Donoghue, who, by the way, was my doctoral supervisor, will be examining it's a seminar in art education, but really pushing out how aesthetic orientations as approaches to research, so as a disposition, so research as a disposition, as a way of being and thinking in the world and with and through the arts. And as for me, my background, actually, I did a bachelor degree and a master's in art history from the Université de Montréal. So I'm an art historian. And then I started working at the Musée d'Art Contemporain de Montréal. So I've been an art museum educator for 7 years. Because when I did 15 years at the Musée d'Art Contemporain, I was in charge of the gallery programs. Then I came here to UBC for my PhD. And for 11 years, I worked at the Vancouver Art Gallery. So that stopped because of COVID. Then the structure changed, and now I'm a full-time lecturer at UBC, but bringing a lot of that experience of being in museum spaces. And I work also with the teacher candidates, elementary and secondary, and with the Master of Museum Education. So that's my background. And therefore,
maybe I can just add too, we have another new faculty member joining us, Dustin Garnett, who will be joining us with a background in historical perspectives in art education. And he was also a school teacher for many years in Toronto, and brings a wealth of knowledge to bear on living histories. And so that's one of the dispositions that we will be taking up. And I think this kind of lends to this slide quite beautifully. The program very much is about living our practice as artists, researchers, and teachers as a living inquiry, and engaging relationally as a worlding practice. So our courses and our projects, they ask questions like, when is art research? Not only what or how, but when. When is it research? And what modes and approaches are widening the debates that are concerning the arts as research today versus 20 years ago, for example? How do we think globally through local situated knowledges, drawing on our classrooms, drawing on our studio practices, and bringing them forward in a way that connects us to the wider purpose? In what ways does creative research contribute to sustainability of the arts at a time when globalization of education is both a concern and a very exciting opportunity? So how do we fit in with those conversations? And I think that this is a very important structure in terms of artist, researcher, teacher. It's a very it's a convention now that is shared across all the different domains of art as research, not just artography, although I think it came originally from artography. And so this is now a definitive triad in terms of the way that we're structuring the program. So whether you're an artist, there's the domain for you to take that work forward. If you're interested in the research component, that can become the focus, with the artist and the teacher informing the researcher. And if you're located primarily in your teaching practice and you want to bring in more art, you want to bring in some research, that's also part of the overall exchange, the overall program structure that you'll find in the courses, in the cohort, and in the activities that we will undertake.
Yes, well said. So perhaps you have questions about the modalities and structures. So this Master of Education in Arts-Based Educational Research is a 30 credits masters. there will be 9 courses. Out of those 9 courses, 2 will be electives, therefore courses which are relevant for your own discipline, for your own interests. And at the end of the 2.5 years, so it's 2.5 years, so there's a next 2 years, and then you have the September to December, will be also for the graduating paper. So 9 courses plus the 10th course is the graduating paper. On average, 1 course per semester. So this will be a cohort, and therefore you will be following some of the core courses. Those core courses being starting in September. There might be a schedule change, of course, but it will give you an idea. So artwork and scholarship with Dr. Sinner, EDCP 520's perspective, practices, and curriculum issues in contemporary art education. One that I will teach, give you a really beautiful sense of the key issues and ideas and practices in thinking art education today. Then in the winter, we move into artography, artist, researcher, teacher, as a research lived inquiry and research-based research with Dr. Sinner. And then they will be in the summer. And as you can see here, most probably in July 26, maybe with guest artists and scholars, that one will be at UBC. So it means that you have to be able to come. You really have to be able to come in person for that one.
And if I can jump in, Marie-France,
yes, certainly.
you know, the studio course is one that I'm particularly excited about because, you know, most universities have one course in arts-based research. Most universities don't have a studio attached to the program or to the course. And so the opportunity to actually work with materials, to be in a studio context, is so important for the fullness of the work, for the beauty of the work, for the poetics of the work. So this studio opportunity is a really important part of this program, and it was a priority area for us, in fact, to make sure that at a graduate level, we had a studio as a cornerstone for the program. So it's theory and practice, and it brings in an expert artist who will be leading the studio inquiry. And it's an on-campus intensive, which gives you the opportunity to be and it's such an important part of being on the campus as part of the learning. And as you were talking, Marie-France, I was thinking back to my own master's degree, which was a cohort similar to this, where we were in fact on a satellite campus, and it was just a beautiful experience where we walked through the program together. You know, and many of us are still in touch today, and I think it speaks to the ways that we build relationships and meaning in our learning experiences when we can share in a cohort like this. And that excites me very, very much. So yeah, absolutely.
So do I. And then very often students will take an elective during the summertime. For many of us, you know, as professionals, we have a little bit more time. They will take an elective. Year 2, a wonderful course, also curriculum issues and theories. And then Indigenous Visual Expression as Pedagogy with Dr. Leddy. Opening up with Research Methodology in Education. That course is precisely where after a 1.5 years, you probably have started to figure out or hone in on a question, a wondering, something that you've started to articulate. So this course is precisely to think about the various research methodologies, but to get a sense of the broad spectrum and really hone in on your own interests. And then at the end of the program will be the graduating paper, probably also finishing your second electives. And I think, Anita, if you'd like to say anything else, but I think that's it for us.
Well, I maybe perhaps just a little bit about the graduating project, the
Yes.
final project, where we have deliberately created a space for multiple ways of doing. And so we could have a final project that is a synthesis of theory, methodology, and practice as it relates to professional practice in a classroom or in a community setting. We could have critical analysis of policies and programs relating to ABER with perhaps an innovative program for 21st century learners. We could have a creative project, which is very much coming out of studio practice, where there's extensive documentation of artistic processes, practices, and production, resulting in a body of work that is then part of an exhibition. It could be a performance, it could be a presentation of works in a variety of different ways and modes, along with artist statements as part of ongoing research with the arts. And it can also be part of an oral tradition. And this is very, very important for me, where a final project can be presented within the parameters of oral traditions, such as storytelling, with adherence to social cultural protocols, for instance, First Nations and Indigenous peoples worldwide, representative of local values, cultures, traditions, and worldviews. So projects can be multimedia based. They may have aspects of all of those. And they can be in person, online, customized to student needs, and in consultation with the advisors. So the program architecture is very flexible, very elastic. It is deliberately intended to create the kinds of conversations that are about ecologies of sustainable practice and sensibility when it comes to the ways that we engage with art as research. And as I think you can see from Marie-France's presentation, constructive mentorship is an absolutely vital part of this. And we're committed to that as part of cultivating the ways of being and becoming through the arts as research. So thank you.
And I'm sure you will have some questions after us. And for now, Kelvin Mark, our colleague, will tell you a little bit more about the admissions requirements and some of the practicalities. Thank you, Kelvin.
Of course. Yes, so regarding the application requirements, if you would like to apply to this program, you must meet the admission requirements for both the Faculty of Graduate Studies and the program itself. This includes a 4-year bachelor's degree in education with at least 76% average in senior level credits. When we talk about senior level credits, we are referring to 3rd or 4th year level courses. And my understanding is that in special circumstances, if you have other relevant field of study, then your teacher education may be waived. And of course, you'll be able to show this in both your transcripts and your academic resume. A note is that the 76% average is not a hard cutoff point. So let's say you do not quite meet this criteria of 76%. The department may still submit a special case rationale for you and recommend you to be admitted by UBC grad school if the rest of your application is strong enough, basically. Normally 18 credits of senior coursework or professional concentration related to art-based education research. And we're also looking for roughly 2 years of teaching experience or quote-unquote other relevant experience within various schools, communities, and organizations that are related to art-based education research. With a question from Rita here, which is, she does not have an education degree, but have an art history and psychology degree. Would that be considered an equivalent, Marie-France?
I would say yes. Please, in your statement of intent, please let us know in what way this master's program would be generative for you, and in your CV, you know, the background of experiences, educationally at large. Education is not just, doesn't happen only in the schools. So therefore, just your educational and kind of connection with the arts at large. Anita, Dr. Sinner, anything you would like to add?
No, I absolutely agree, Marie-France. I think we have a very broad definition of artist, broad definition of researcher, broad definition of educator. And I think you said it beautifully. Absolutely. You do not have to have a degree in education to be part of this cohort. In fact, I think the more diversity we have in our student body, perhaps even the more dynamic it will become.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for this question. Kelvin?
Yep, we can move on. Yes, and the you also be asked to provide 3 letters of recommendation. These are basically your quote-unquote reference letters. And we're looking it to be from either educators, supervisors, colleagues, or clients that can speak to your ability to complete the degree and your interest in arts-based educational research. Basically, what it means is we need people that can speak to your ability to finish the program and that you show passion in the program. So normally, we are looking for 2 education-related references and 1 professional reference. But if that is not possible, we understand that some of you might have completed your education a long time ago, and you might not be able to get in touch with your professors or instructors. And in those rare cases or instances, 3 professional references would be acceptable as well. So regarding your resume and CV, has to include your education, employment history, basically anything that can reflect your experience. And as Marie-France said just now, in particular, you should indicate your arts background, and especially if you can, include any exhibitions or related activities related to art-based research. And please note that this is a resume for a graduate program application. So what this means is, unlike a professional resume for a job, which sometimes asks you to be concise, there is no need to be concise in this resume. You can include as many details as you'd like to include to properly reflect what you have to offer as a student. Mm-hmm. Similarly, in your statement of intent, is maximum of 600 words, where you can, in a couple of short paragraphs, tell us about your experience, your professional goals, and how you'd like to be involved in the program. For example, what's your background? How would further your practice as a professional? How might you be changed by this program, and what will you bring to the program? And your statement of intent is basically the best place for you to argue your case as a good candidate for the program. If your GPA is not quite there at the 76% mark, this is where you make your argument. Mm. And lastly, as part of the application procedure, we will require scanned copies of all official transcripts and degree certificates. We suggest that if you do not already have an official transcript on hand, to order at least 1 or 2 transcripts. Basically, while you're applying, you need to upload a scanned copy. And when you are eventually accepted into the program, you have to provide a copy directly to UBC grad school. So in this instance, you need 2 transcripts. However, if you send the transcript directly to us while you're applying, then we'll have the transcript on hand for your application. And after you've been accepted, because you sent the transcript directly to us already, you do not need to resend it again, if that makes any sense. So moving, and also please make sure that if the transcripts that you have on hand is an old one, make sure it actually says that you graduated or completed your program. Yeah.
And if we have more questions, we can always write to you, Kelvin.
Yes.
Okay.
If you have any questions, you can email me directly. Let's see, we have a question here. Rachel is wondering if this program only applies to visual arts, or does this program also refer to all arts disciplines, including music?
Anita?
Yes.
Definitely. It's definitely open. Oh, yes.
Absolutely. This is really an excellent question, Rachel. In fact, I'm teaching the artwork scholarship course this term on campus, and the cohort, the class has as a cohort of students from music, language and literacy, visual arts, performance. So we have and students outside of the arts who've decided they'd like to take a course and find out what this is all about. So we have a wonderful, diverse, and dynamic group that bring very different art forms and interests to the class every week. So absolutely. And so if you're coming from music, you bring that foundation and you build on that foundation in relation to arts-based research and in relation to curriculum studies as artist, researcher, teacher. So again, a very broad definition of artist, just as we have a broad definition of teacher. A teacher can be K-12, can be in community, can be in higher education, could be in a very informal setting, might be a curator, could be in a whole variety of ways. So I think it's very important to feel that space is open and invitational.
Thank you. Good question. Thank you very much. Kelvin, back to you.
Of course. And this part is specifically for those who are from a university outside of Canada, where English is not the primary language of instruction. So specifically, we're referring to the language of instruction of the institute being English. If your university primary language of instruction is another language, but your program specifically is English, it still wouldn't count. It has to be the university as a whole that uses English as the primary language of instruction. If this applies to you, you must provide results of an English language proficiency examination, for example, IELTS or TOEFL, as part of your application. And what this means is you have to include it in your application. It's not an instance where you can apply, wait to be accepted, and then go take the test. It does not work like that, unfortunately. Tests must have been taken within the last 24 months at the time of your submission. And if you are unsure of the required test grades, you can find it on the UBC website.
Thank you.
We have a question from Brooke here. How would the studio time factor in for someone who is not a visual artist?
So studio time is an opportunity to experiment with different approaches and different materials. Not everyone who enters into an ABER program or course is in fact a visual artist. In fact, I'm thinking of my class at the moment, I would say the minority are visual artists, and others are coming from different areas and interests. And so we have visual art. We also do a little bit of music. We do a little bit of performance. We do a little bit of dance. We do a little bit of improv. We do some play work, so as in reading plays and acting out the plays and performative work. So in terms of studio time, this is where, when talking with your mentor in the program, whether it's Marie-France, myself, or both of us, where we would work out perhaps, okay, what would you like to do with your studio time? Yes, we will have a course that will be studio based, but studio time in relation to the program is certainly, Brooke, something that we would want to encourage you to undertake. It could be a practice you're doing at home. I love crocheting. I love stitching. I love embroidery. These are all part of the ways that we can think about our studio practice in a more expansive way. Knitting, for example, is a tremendously provocative space these days when it comes to artist research. Does that help address the question a little bit, Brooke, or can you follow up with that?
When we get to the question and period, please, Brooke, you will be, we invite you to unmute as well, so we can come back to that question. Thank you very much, Brooke, it's really important, very relevant.
Okay, and as a part of your acknowledgement of your part-time status form, please ignore the typo on screen. As part of the ABR1 program, you are considered part-time students. So there are certain things that you're not eligible for. And these include scholarships, grants, bursaries, loans, or financial aid in the official sense. When I say official sense, that means if you are able to secure third-party loan yourself, that is okay. But if whatever channel that you are looking for financial assistance has to go through UBC approval due to the program status being part-time, you will not be eligible. And when you're applying for the program, you'll be asked to acknowledge this. You have to sign a form and upload it, basically. And if you have an existing UBC ID, please also include it in the form as well. And some people sometimes ask, is there a way for me to become full-time status? Unfortunately, no. So even if you take a lot of different electives and you quote unquote take a full course load, because this is a cohort program, meaning everyone takes the same core courses at the same time, at the same pace, there is no way for you to change your student status from part-time to full-time. So this is something important to consider. Next slide. Yes, so application procedure. How exactly do you apply? The entire application process is done online. There is no way to apply in person, unfortunately. So you go to grad.ubc.ca/apply/online/. If you have a student ID, please use it in the application, or else if the system accidentally creates a new student ID for you, the issue of a duplicate student ID is extremely tedious to fix. You have to go through various other different offices and departments, and it will take a long while to get that sorted out. Anyways, after you have logged into grad.ubc.ca, you have to search for the correct program, select art education or Master of Education in arts-based educational research, and specifically you're looking for the one that says professional cohort. You do not want to apply to the in-person program by mistake. You're looking for the September 2025 start one. You fill in everything, upload all supporting documents as indicated, and then you can enter your application. The application deadline is April 1st, 2025, and the deadline to upload all documents. These include your transcripts or certificates, your reference letters, your resumes, and all that stuff. The deadline for that will be 2 weeks later at April 15th, 2025. There is a non-refundable application fee, and that is $116 for domestic applicants. So your Canadian citizens and your permanent residences, and $168 for international applicants. This is Canadian dollars.
Mm.
Yes. And, as I said, you'll be asked to upload the relevant supporting documents. These include your official transcripts, your references, your statement of intent, your resume, and your English language test, if applicable. And as previously mentioned, once you are formally admitted into the program, if you have not already provided an official sealed transcript directly to UBC or UBC Grad Studies, then would be the time to do so. The only exception would be if your post-secondary education is done entirely at UBC, in which case we would have your grades on record already.
Mhm.
Is this we have a question in the chat by Brian. Is this program the type of master's most likely to be acceptable to the TQS for teachers to go to step 7 of the pay grade? No, step 6 of the pay grade. Should I contact TQS before applying to the program? I am unable to comment on this. Are you able to comment on this, Marie-France or Anita?
In my experience, and yes, this is because you have a master's, it will you can qualify to go up to level 6. Yes, this is what is happening with other graduate students. Also part of the BCTF who are doing their master's program, Masters in Education. And this program will qualify you also for, even if it's online, it will qualify you for the grade 6, the level 6. Yes.
Now, I'll just follow on that. One of the considerations of making this essentially an online program with one studio course on campus was in the summer was intended for teachers who are working in many different locations, already committed to their full careers, but need to have this step to move up. And so this is in fact designed to help facilitate that step in your professional development as a teacher. And so I hope that helps a little bit, Brian.
Okay. So references, there's a lot of text here.
Yeah. So when adding your references to the application, as I said before, you'll be asked if they are professional or an academic reference. Can skip that. And it is strongly recommended for you to submit an electronic letters of reference. This is simply because physical letters take a long time to arrive and sometimes they get lost. So how do you do this in the application? You'll be asked to fill in the email addresses of your 3 referees. And a caveat here is to make your life easier, you'd be including an email address from with a professional domain tied to an organization. For example, an email ending with something like @ubc.ca or school district 62 something .ca, something like that. If your reference uses free email address like Gmail, Hotmail, and etc., instead they will receive a link to a paper reference form that they can download, print out, fill in, and then mail to our office, basically. So going back to the online part, once you have submitted and paid for your online application, then your references will automatically receive an email link with instructions to either complete the electronic submission or the download link to a paper form. So very important, you need to pay and submit the form before your references will receive a link. So let's say you're just filling in your form, you're getting stuff prepared, but you haven't actually paid and submitted yet. Your references won't be notified. You can tell them in advance to expect a reference link coming. We would recommend you to do so as well, because there has been cases where applicants include a reference and the reference wasn't aware that they would be submitting a reference letter, and come application deadline's passed and the reference still has not been submitted. So you would like to avoid that, basically. So a reference letter can take place for the reference. So instead of typing in all the questions and the forms, your referee can instead just choose to upload a PDF or Word document that addresses all the questions asked in the form. That is okay too. So you can type in the form or upload a document or both. That is completely okay. Let's see. We have I'll get to the question in the chat in a second. So as I said before, in cases where your referees are unable to submit an electronic reference, a sealed and endorsed reference letter may be sent by mail. It's very important if you do it that way, that your reference on the sealed envelope write down the cohort code of ABR1 and then include their signature on the seal of the envelope. This process may seem extremely tedious and redundant, but this is to prevent reference fraud, which the UBC grad school has encountered before. And once you choose to submit paper references, ask them to send to the following mailing address that's on screen right now. So Brian asked, is there a time frame of how long ago we were last in an academic setting? Example, I graduated UBC in 2016. So as far as I'm aware, this program does not have this limitation or requirement in mind. You could have graduated within the past 5 years, or it could be 20 years ago. You still qualify to apply. Regarding the application status, the program is currently open and accepting applications. As mentioned previously, the application deadline is April 1st, 2025, with a document upload deadline of April 15th, 2025. If you know for sure that you are unable to meet those deadlines for whatever reason, and you need just a little bit longer of an extension, please tell us in advance, basically. Yeah. And now to the part that everyone enjoys the most, tuition. So the domestic tuition fee per installment is $2,388 plus student fees. That totals to roughly a total of $16,716 plus student fees for the entire duration of the 7 term that you're in the program. For international students, you'd be paying a little bit more, $2,735 plus student fees per installment, to a total of $19,145. The tuition fees are due at the beginning of each term. So these would be September, January, and May. So please note that tuition is charged as a whole program fee and not on a per credit basis. What this means and how this meaningfully affects you is, for example, let's say before you took the program, you did some courses that were not used for program completion, and you request for credits to be transferred to this program, and you end up being able to take one last course. That does not mean that your tuition is any cheaper, unfortunately. Regardless of how many courses you end up taking in this program, the tuition fee will be exactly the same. The university reserves the right to increase fees every year, but if that's happening, it will be announced in September. So as I said, there are tuition fees, and on top of that, there are student fees. So student fees are charged in addition to tuition and vary from term to term. Usually you'd be asked to budget between $800 and $900 per term, but there are many ways for you to keep this cost to a minimum. Basically, all student fees, not all, most student fees have the option to be opt out of, and you have to do it every term, basically. So for example, some of the student fees that you can opt out of include your medical and dental plan. If you already have your own plan going on, this is approximately $370 per year. It's usually charged in September. So if you have your own plans, you can opt out of this one. There's also the U-Pass, which is the public transit pass for the Greater Vancouver area. And this is approximately $184 per term. And you may opt out of this if you live outside of Greater Vancouver area. And you have to apply for the opting out every single term, unfortunately. And let's say you live quite far from campus. Let's say you live in Coquitlam or Maple Ridge, and you do not usually use any transit at all, but you are still within the Greater Vancouver area. Unfortunately, you will still have to pay for the U-Pass fee. And lastly, regarding teacher education certificates, if this applies to you or if you know you have one. So this is basically directed to teachers in the Vancouver Lower Mainland. And if you have taken UBC students in your classrooms as student teachers, this applies to you. You might be eligible for certain tuition credits, basically, that you can claim. If this applies to you, please contact the teacher education office at teacher.ed@ubc.ca. Yeah, so that is the end of our presentation. If you have any questions, now's the time to ask. Feel free.
I'm going to stop sharing. Thank you very much, Kelvin. So we're listening.
Can I come back to Brooke's question? Brooke,
So-
you asked about, sorry, Marie-France.
No, go ahead.
Okay, about studio practice. And, you know, and it's interesting because there's studio in its own conception is changing quite radically. What I do with the orthography course is the course is always about walking with. So we actually take up walking as a studio practice. We walk with public art. We walk with the sustainability development goals. We walk with our senses. We walk with different art forms. And so there's many different ways that studio can be constructed. And I think walking is such an important part of how we're coming to think differently in relation to our communities and our situatedness. So that's another way that we can think about studio practice as an embodied experience, not necessarily a production of an art form, but actually an embodied experience. So I just want to throw that one in.
And I remember, Brian, that you were mentioning that you're in music. So walking in music, the notion of rhythm in the body. So this is something that we want to bring into this way of thinking through the arts as art-based educational research. We know that it's already here in Vancouver. It's 5:38. I don't know where about your time zone. We want to keep this short, and thank you so much for your time. Is there another question that we missed, Calvin? Is there another question that we missed? Please feel free to unmute yourself and just ask it. It might be simpler because I'm always lost in those chat questions. Please just go ahead. Even if it's just to say hello.
There was one post much earlier on regarding how many hours a week should we anticipate committing to our studies. An excellent question. And, you know, thinking around the needs of working professionals, taking one course a semester, the workload balance is absolutely critical. And I think when you're taking one course, what would you be doing that week? Well, you might be doing a few readings, you might be participating in some group work, you may be coming in for a drop-in session to talk about some ideas or some questions that you have, working one-to-one with the instructor and or in small groups. So maybe 5 hours, 10 hours a week. Marie-France, what do you say?
I would say it varies from the beginning of the term to when projects are due and the work is happening, between 5 to 10 hours. And we each have our own rhythm, of course, that needs to be taken into consideration. Yes, but between 5-ish to 10-hour-ish. But, you know, it fluctuates throughout the term. And so basically most of the courses will be therefore online with discussion posts. These discussion posts are replacing the kind of discussion that we would have in a seminar if we were in person. And that's where a lot of the thinking is happening. It's a thinking in motion. It's a thinking through the writing, but also through drawing and poetry, and it could be spoken as well. There's possibilities in the discussion post for you also to have something which is recorded and then said and spoken. So we work with Canvas, which is a very interesting application, which is very, I would say, offers a lot of opportunities to engage with different modalities as a support of teaching for online teaching is I think I can't say I don't get any subsidies or anything from Canvas, the company, but I would say that it's really nicely designed for online students. I would perhaps have open studios or open sessions, which are optional, but invitations for students at different times of the week or day when I change the schedule. And then we meet for an hour and we discuss a reading. So each instructor will have various modalities of engaging as richly as possible. And so I think this is it. Rita had to go. And so if there's no more question, thank you so much, Kelvin. Anita, Dr. Sinner, thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Everyone, Brian, Rupinder, Gloria, Givensley, thank you so much. If you do have any questions, you know how to reach us. Kelvin, your email is on the website. We thank you and wish you a lovely evening wherever you are in the world.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Marie-France.
Take
Good
care.
night, everyone.
Bye. Au revoir. Thank you so much, Kevin. Thank you.